Sveshnikov is a famous grandmaster not because he became a world champion, but because there is an entire line of a Sicilian with his name. But that is not even the most important thing. The most important thing in reality is what here it's called the Complete C3 Sicilian, that is called Alapin variation, that Sveshnikov has used throughout his life as a chess player. Unfortunately, Sveshnikov is dead now, okay? But he used a very powerful phrase. He said, the Alapin has put bread on my table for 40 years. So if a line of against the Sicilian, that is e4, c5, c3, is good for a grandmaster like Sveshnikov for 40 years, it must be good also for us that we play e4 and we want to know what to do against c5. The book is made by two main parts. One is the one with d5 and the other is the one with knight f6. Okay, so he covered everything. But why I like this book? Because he covered it through mostly through example games, also if he gives theory. So he is really thorough in his teaching. And chapter 1 begins with a historical overview. He says the move to c3 against the Sicilian defense is relatively young. It was first mentioned in the 1840s, in contrast to the continuation with b4 and f4, which had already been analyzed by Greco in 1620, so in the 1600, more than 2 centuries before. Here he says, let's start with the earliest known games. And the game number 1 is Poppert white against our Staunton black, right? Staunton name is famous because he was the strongest player in a certain period, but if I remember well, he avoided to meet with Morphy. And of course it's famous because this type of chess that you see today with the finials on the king, with this kind of knight, bishop and so on, and rook, are called Staunton chess pieces, right? So of course this set in particular, it comes from a Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union if I remember well, and it's called Grandmaster set. But in any case this was invented by Staunton, or at least attributed to him in the 1849 if I remember well. Okay, and then of course there will be chess set collectors which will tell you more about the story of the sets. Okay, so c3, e6, and this is marked as dubious. Knight f3, d5, and now white plays e5. Now at this point you must understand that that's why I tell you it's important to know the pawn structure, because your opponent here, if he's white for example, will think that he's still in the Sicilian. In reality he is not in the Sicilian anymore. This is the French advance. Okay, so what do you do in the French advance? You just develop your knight, okay? But of course it's possible that today a computer has found that this is a better move. I don't know, honestly, guys. I would have just developed a knight because you need to bring out the pieces. Once you have moved this that shield the knight, you can take it out practically. Okay, d4, queen b6 and bishop d3. Notice that this is a trap, and bishop d7. If you don't play bishop d7, then you're going to pay, okay? Because if you make the mistake of tac, 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 whoops, and tac, okay, at this point you lose the queen, right? So this is a typical French trap that you should know, and that's why you put the bishop on d7 when the knight is on c6, because you don't want to have that kind of problem, okay? And let's see, I think the position should have been this, because it's a typical position of the French, okay? So after bishop d3, what you do is this move, because this move now makes that thing real. That is not a trap anymore, okay? And then at this point it's possible that the best move is d takes c5, but obviously we are in 1841 and white played bishop c2. Again, here at a certain point you need to exchange there, but I don't know. I think at this point he played rook c8, but maybe it's better to take, okay? So rook c8, castle, and a5, a4, and here we have a diagram in which black makes a mistake. The mistake is that he plays g6, and this is a positional blunder. In reality I should have probably taken on d4, okay? Because the point is, if you play g6 and then he takes on c5, you have the bishop going there, right? But then you are leaving all of this to your enemy, okay? So it doesn't make much sense to play g6. Then you solve the c takes d4, which is the center, and then if you want to play g6, I think, right? That should be the rationale. g6, d takes e5, bishop takes e5, knight e3, and then you have f6. But this is ugly. This position honestly is ugly, because you see, I don't know if you realize what's going on here. Here there is the possibility that your center is kind of open, your king is still in the center, you will keep it from castling because you don't want him to castle, and then there is a strong attack, right? Let me see what happens, but I think more or less this is what happens. E takes f6, knight takes f6, and knight b5. Okay, so castle, it didn't prevent him from going away. Bishop h6, this is interesting. But I don't know why he played knight g4, honestly, but I could have played this, right? But it doesn't mean that it's not a problem, because yeah, maybe knight g5, again it's a bad position, but okay, let's see where this kind of exchange sacrifice lead. Obviously bishop takes here, and of course, okay, now I see why he wanted to take here. King here and attack. So Staunton is thinking that he's able to have compensation thanks to this attack. Probably not true. Probably not true, because you see, honestly, black can have a lot of things that can be exploited. Let's see what happens, however. So he plays queen e2. Great move. Why? Because he's threatening h3. Once this move, this is gone. So how does black solve that? Obviously he retreats, bishop c5, but then there is another problem. That what do you think white played in this position? Because it's a kind of interesting move. He played knight f d4. Black exchanged the rook, white takes back, and now this is a thing that you generally do, yeah, in the French, which is go forward, because they become a kind of central force, right? And you can even win at a certain point if you are able to push. But obviously it's white turn, and he plays queen f3, and the threat is probably queen f7 and try to give checkmate in some way. He cannot play queen f8 because this will take back. So let's see what he does. Yeah, he plays knight d8 to prevent queen f7, but this is unprotected, it's hanging, right? Queen takes d5 check, bishop e6, knight takes e6, knight takes e6, and of course now there is the last move of the game that wins the game, which is bishop b3. So black wasn't able to get an actual compensation for his exchange sacrifice. I think this game was interesting, but maybe Staunton was a little too aggressive and didn't have real proof that he was winning there. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is the book, The Complete C3 Sicilian, the Alapin variation by its greatest expert, which is Evgeny Sveshnikov, that played it throughout his life. I will continue to show you some games because I really like the book format, and honestly, also if it's an old book, it's like 500 pages of chess wisdom about this variation of the Sicilian, so it's worth to have it if you play one e4. Thank you very much for watching.